It's tragic. Collisions involving youth are particularly tragic because, our youth they're so young, they're at the beginning of their lives, and a lot of times collisions can have lifelong lasting effects, right? I've been to collisions where young people have died as a result of the collision, and it's tragic for their family who has to deal with that. Being on a collision scene where a young man died and having to grab his girlfriend who had arrived on scene afterwards and pull her off the road because she was completely out of her mind with loss and with grief at the loss of her boyfriend, and having to drag her off the road so that she didn't get hurt or get hit by a car, having to reteach her how to breathe because she couldn't breathe. She was so stricken that she forgot how to breathe. So those collisions are tragic and heartbreaking, and they stay with you forever.
Okay, get out. Hi. Dude, that's my sister.
Why do you have to bring her everywhere we go?
Oh my gosh,
Shut up! Look at what Jason just posted. Oh, I'm seriously gonna kill him. Let me see.
Or you can tell him you love
Oh my
him.
gosh,
It's
shut
not
up.
gonna kill him.
Seriously, Matthew. Look,
Let me see.
Matthew. Let me see.
Oh, it's not that bad. It's horrible.
Are you? I'm gonna text him. What are you doing?
Relax, I'm not even moving. They're not.
No, get off. What are you even doing?
It's not that bad. Let's go.
Are you kidding
Give
me?
it back.
It is really developmentally appropriate that children who are middle school and high school don't listen to us. This is their time to try things, and it's safe. It's not a time that they're going to go to jail or there's these big consequences, except for when it comes to safety. There are big consequences if you don't wear your helmet and you fall and you crack your head on the sidewalk. Are there big consequences if you roll your eyes at the teacher? No. There are big consequences, though, when it comes to that safe factor. And I think that's the difference between age appropriateness, rebelling, which is normal, and we need them to do that. That's part of growing up. And then understanding that the safety factors are critical for them to grow up. So it really is important when it comes to safety, you guys, that you think of yourself too and make sure that your safety is always number one, and that you're not doing things to just be cool. I know that's tough, but that you're not doing things just to be cool when it comes to safety.
Well, I think, for our teens, our adolescents growing up, one of the things that we really want to get to them is even just stop and think moments. Stop and think, what is it that I'm doing? What is it that could go wrong? How could I plan to mitigate those hazards? And mitigate really just means control.
When you look at driving's not hard. It's not, right? I mean, you sit behind the wheel of a vehicle and you have this awesome power and awesome freedom, right? You get to go places. You get to take your friends places. You get to go fast, right? And it seems so simple and so easy. And it kind of is, right? Driving isn't super, super difficult if you're paying attention. But trust me, because I've seen it and I've done it, if you're not driving safely and things don't go well, they go bad very fast. The consequences can be life-changing.
What's in it for me is a question we might hear in the workforce. Why should I do that? Why should I follow this rule or this procedure? But we also hear with younger kids, what's in it for me? Why should I do that? Why do we need to wear a bike helmet? Because Dad, you never wore one when you were my age 30 years ago or 40 years ago, which is true. But in every day, we school our kids, we tell them things, we discipline them. They're told to do certain things in school for instruction, and they go, okay, yeah, we're going to learn math. But sometimes when we talk about health and safety or precautions, they say, well, why? Why should I do that? But one thing I tell people all the time, and it doesn't matter of age, even my kids, is say, just think about it. Think about the what ifs. Even though it might be boring, saying, what could happen? But if you're just going into equipment, you're going to learn what could happen because it's going to happen. Something's going to happen. But the reason we have rules and processes to follow is because history tells us things can happen.
My role primarily is obviously patient care, and we work very closely with the fire department and the RCMP when we get to an accident scene. If we're the first ones on the scene, we have to figure out where the traffic is going to go, if it's a highway accident or if we have to block off traffic in town. But if we're second on scene or third on scene, generally the RCMP will have an idea of where the patients are or how many patients there are. If we're lucky, we'll be able to get an update from the RCMP or fire when we're traveling to the scene, so we'll already know if we need to have more resources. So when we arrive on scene, my very first priority is to make sure that we're not going to be outnumbered by patients, so that if we have a number of serious patients, then we'll need to get some more resources in there. And that's called triage. And my number one priority when we first get there is triaging the patients in order of priority and in order of their injuries. And that's what we do very first when we get to the scene.
We do see a lot of distracted driving, in fact, especially amongst young people. Last year, we had over 4,000 incidents of distracted driving in Alberta. So 4,000, so still a problem. And, you know, it's so tempting, you know, with our phones and stuff like that to feel that it's really important to answer the phone when, no matter what we're doing, when we're in class, when we're with our friends, or when we're driving. 1 in 5 new drivers get into a collision in the first 2 years of driving. You know, statistics have shown us this, right? They're a high risk to become involved in collisions, and then you start adding distracted driving into that. You know, a person who's distracted driving is at least 3 times more likely to be involved in a collision. And these collisions can be life-changing collisions. We think about in town and little minor fender benders. Well, a little minor fender bender with a pedestrian in a crosswalk is now a pretty big collision. I've seen tragic collisions, one in particular where a number of young people died, and it was directly related to them on their phones.
Being impaired is really about being in a state that makes you unsafe to do certain things. You can be impaired from drugs or alcohol, lack of sleep, improper nutrition. You can be impaired in lots of different ways. And why that's so important is that when you're doing things like driving a car, for example, it's really important that you have a physical state and a psychological state, right? A mental state, so that you can do that in a way that doesn't make you unsafe on the road for you and for other people.
I think social media usage as a high school kid, it really comes down to this whole idea of invincibility that I think that we kind of have at that age, like speaking from my own experience too. But the just the honest truth, what really comes to mind is just that we are not invincible, and we aren't even on these social media channels. Because I think grabbing our phones has become a physical habit just as much as like a memory thing. Like I think now we're at a point where if something is going wrong or something is happening, we are instantly, our first instinct is to grab our phone.
I think it's also important to say that distracted driving isn't just cell phones. Distracted driving is your friends being rowdy in the back seat and you being distracted by that. Distracted driving is combing your hair. Distracted driving is putting your makeup on. Distracted driving is anything that takes your attention away from the road, because things happen on the road really quickly. And when they happen, if you're not able to react to them, bad things can happen very, very fast.
You see it all the time. When I'm driving down the highway in my ambulance, I drive past people that are texting, I drive past people that are shaving, I drive past people that are reading the newspaper. Maybe you miss a red light, or maybe you miss a stop sign or a corner or something. And when I come up onto the scene,
yeah, it's not an easy thing when you're talking about distracted driving and things like that, because quite frankly, there's a lot of adults that don't really do it responsibly either. And really, I think about, when I think about things like that, it's really putting yourself and developing some habits. Again, that's that plan. It's really hard when you're in a car and your phone goes to not look at it. It's very difficult. I think ultimately what you need to decide, is it more important for me to look at that phone, or is it more important for me to keep my eyes on the road? What about the other people on the road? Don't you have a responsibility for them? Not just yourself, but other people? In my life, I've been privy to a lot of fatal car collisions, more than I'd like to be part of, to be honest with you. And I've seen it both in the workplace, I've seen it on the roads in my community. You don't have to drive too far in Alberta not to see a cross sticking out the ditch. I really think about that when I'm driving by, and it really gives me a reminder that I have a responsibility to do something a certain way.
I don't want to rag on kids either, because I want to be fair. That adults, older people are very likely to be on their cell phones as well when they're driving and be distracted. And I think that is important to note, is that role modeling piece, because parents who are texting and driving, parents who are displaying this distracted driving behavior, whatever that is, they're modeling that to their kids. That's a huge impact on those kids. It is going to influence those kids to maybe do similar things. I think also older kids, right? Older kids oftentimes are tasked with driving their younger siblings around, so they're modeling that behavior to those younger siblings as well, and potentially the younger siblings might also repeat that kind of behavior.
It's a hard question to answer. Why should all the children listen to the adults that have journeyed this already? And I think that the adage of "we've been there" is kind of lost on them. They don't always understand that. And I see the excitement that can come with not wearing your helmet, because maybe there's someone that you're trying to impress and it might mess up your hair or whatever might happen. But I think that remembering that the safety pieces are actually for you to survive getting through certain things. And I don't mean to survive to, like, there's a perishing thought there. That's not what I mean on survival, but even just understanding the possibilities that could happen without being fearful of doing everything all the time. But there is a level of safety that you have to have in all that you do, and that continues throughout all your life.
When I was young and growing up as a teenager, there were certain limitations put on me of where I could go and how late I could stay. But one thing my parents always said is, like, it doesn't matter what hour it is. If you need a ride, call us. I'd rather be woken up by you asking for a ride, because maybe your friend might be intoxicated or whatever. There's a reason why you can't drive home. My dad always said, call me. I want you to wake me up. I don't want the police to wake me up because something has happened.
Kids, just remember that, we're here to help you. Certainly scary things can happen, and you will be scared. You could be some 18-year-old captain of the football team, got in a car accident, and you're going to be scared. Maybe you broke your leg or you have a concussion or something. You might not remember what happened at the accident. That's a scary situation, and that's okay to be scared. When the first responders get there, it's okay to tell them that you're scared. We're not going to judge you about being scared. If you have little brothers and sisters, watch out for them. Just be safe. Look out for each other. And that's really, I think, the most important thing that I can say. Take a CPR class, take first aid, get some safety training if it's offered in school or maybe at your employment. Don't take any of those safety kind of concerns for granted, because they're there for you to continue to live a healthy, strong life.
Traffic collisions are just a reality of the world. When you get so many cars driving around, they're bound to collide with each other on occasion. But I think there's so much more we can do to keep ourselves safe. Avoiding those high-risk behaviors, impaired driving, distracted driving, aggressive driving, driving without a seatbelt on. These types of behaviors are things that we can control as drivers, and these types of behaviors are things that will greatly reduce the amount of collisions that we have on those roads and the amount of life-changing incidents that occur there.
I think the overall message that I want to send to our young people out there is really get involved, start the conversation. Have the courage to start the conversation within your group of friends. And you don't have to go right off the bat and jump into the deep end. That's why I encourage you to have the conversation with your parents first. You know, what are they saying to you? What is their jobs like? How did they implement controls in their jobs? How did they control hazards on their job? And they must be doing it pretty well because they keep coming home every day. And so ask them about their experiences. Once you have a good understanding or a level of understanding from that, then start talking to other adults and try those conversations with your peer group, with your friends. You know, and it's as simple as this. My friends and I are going to go out for a bike ride. Let's just think about what could go wrong. If we go for a bike ride, where are we going? How are we going to get there? You know, are we going to ride single file? Do we have to ride on the road? You know, what does that look like? Are we going to wear some helmets just in case we fall? Might we need a snack and some refreshments because we're going to be there for a little bit? It's just stopping and thinking and talking your way through it. It really doesn't ruin the fun. As a matter of fact, it makes it more fun because now you know that you're prepared when something does go wrong.
I think the strongest way that we can make an impact on students for safety is we still have to talk about it. We got to continually talk about it, but it's going to be coming from their peers. So support each other, you guys. Tell each other not to drive and talk on their phones and not to go without a helmet, and support each other to be safe. We want to make sure that you're seeing each other the next day, that no one gets injured, and we need to support each other. Adults support each other, students, you guys need to support each other. So peer to peer, remind each other to be safe and how you can be safe.